And peers are going to evaluate your paper differently from editors or reviewers. What they really want to know is how your study affects them. That's why most people read papers. They want to stay up to date so they can adjust their own research accordingly based on what's being developed in the field. If you're doing something similar to them, they may need to differentiate the research to ensure their study will be publishable. If you help to overcome a limitation in a technique, they may want to adapt that new technique in their own research. That's why people read papers in the field. And they want new ideas. They're hoping that your study will generate hypotheses. And if they can build off your research, then that means your study was valuable. So you do have three distinct groups of readers, and they are evaluating your paper in different ways. Editors for suitability and popularity, will it be downloaded and cited? Reviewers are basically evaluating your credibility and reliability. And then in terms of your peers, they're evaluating reproducibility and usefulness. So you need to keep all three groups of readers in mind if you want to maximize your impact in the field. Too often we see authors write for themselves. That's not why you're writing your paper. You're writing your paper for your readers. Keep your readers in mind. Now, in terms of writing for these three readers, there's strategies that you can help you focus to ensure that what's important and valuable about your study is communicated clearly. We talked about these three already when we talked about titles: the variable, the condition, the outcome, and the sample. This is especially true for empirically based research, regardless if it's from social sciences or natural sciences. Make sure you and all your co-authors agree on what was the most important valuable you're investigating, what was the key outcome that you're measuring, and from what sample was these measurements taken from. And by defining these three factors helps you to focus your manuscript accordingly. So for example, maybe the condition you wanted to address was humidity and the effects it has on hardness of these plasma processed silicon dioxide thin films. So make sure you identify those three key factors. And then you want to keep repeating these three key factors in your title, in your research problem, in your aims, in your conclusion. And by repeating the same key factors throughout your paper, readers will not become lost. They will not become confused. They'll clearly know what it is your study is trying to accomplish, and you will increase your impact. So in addition to identifying those three factors, it should also be very clear three important statements. And I recommend you write these three statements down before you even consider writing the paper. First is the research question. This is the motivation for your work. Most research questions fall in one of three categories. You're either trying to identify something unknown, or you're trying to overcome some limitation, or there's a controversy that you're trying to resolve. So in addition to understanding what the question is, you need to understand the type of question that you're asking. This will often define which study design is appropriate to address that question. After you have a very clear single statement, I often ask people, what was the motivation for your work? And then they go on and talk for about 10 minutes. That means for me, it was never clear in their own mind. You should be able to answer this in a single sentence. The next important statement are your aims. How are you going to address this problem? What are your goals you're hoping to achieve with the study? This again should be a very simple single statement of what you're hoping to achieve. If you have 3 or 4 different aims, those are probably different papers. One paper needs to focus on one important problem. That's what editors are looking for. And then lastly, the conclusion. Do not wait until the end of the paper before you write down the conclusion. You should know what the conclusion of your study is before you begin. And your conclusion is not meant to be simply a summary of your key findings. It's meant to be an answer or a solution to the problem you identified. So it's useful to think of your manuscript as a story. And let's say you're reading a novel, and in the very beginning of the novel, somebody steals his bag. I apologize, sir. Well, by the time you finish reading the novel, you want to know who stole his bag. But can you imagine if you got to the end and you never found out? You might think, well, maybe I missed it. So you go back, you look at the last few pages, you realize, no, the author never told me who the thief was. Then you'll probably start to feel frustrated. And you probably don't want to read another book from that author again. Same is true with your readers. If you tell them there's an important research question that you're trying to solve, but you do not clearly give them the solution when they finish, they will also feel lost and frustrated. So when you write your conclusion, write it to answer the key problem.